Hello, everyone. Welcome to Readings in English, your go-to channel for learning English through deep, emotional, and engaging stories. Whether you're a beginner or looking to polish your skills, this channel is designed to make your learning journey enjoyable and meaningful. English is a truly global language, spoken in over 70 countries and used as a bridge between cultures, ideas, and people. Learning it opens doors to countless opportunities, whether for work, travel, or simply connecting with others around the world. Here, we believe that one of the best ways to learn English is through storytelling. Why? Because stories captivate your heart and mind, making new words and expressions stick effortlessly. Today, I'm thrilled to present a touching story that embodies the power of language, resilience, and connection. It's called Echoes of a New Tongue, and it follows the journey of Amir and his daughter Lena, refugees who arrive in a new country with nothing but their bond and the hope of building a better future. Through struggles, triumphs, and the transformative power of storytelling, they not only learn English, but also discover their place in a new world. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this heartfelt tale together. Don't forget to follow along to pick up new English words, phrases, and ideas that will inspire your own learning journey. The bus jolted to a stop, its worn brakes screeching against the evening air. Amir stepped down onto the cracked pavement, Lena's small hand wrapped tightly in his. The unfamiliar skyline stretched before them, a sprawling, chaotic expanse of lights and towering buildings that seemed to pulse with life. To Amir, it felt both hopeful and overwhelming. He glanced down at Lena, whose wide eyes reflected a mixture of exhaustion and curiosity. Their journey had been grueling. Fleeing their war-torn homeland, they had endured weeks in a crowded refugee camp before finally boarding the plane that brought them to this new world. The city, with its relentless pace and foreign language, was nothing like the quiet village they left behind. Yet, it was here, in this strange place, that Amir hoped to build a life for his daughter. The shelter where they were to stay stood at the end of a narrow street lined with graffiti-covered walls and overflowing dumpsters. Amir hesitated at the entrance, a heavy steel door flanked by two flickering fluorescent lights. A kind-faced woman, Martha, greeted them and guided them inside, explaining the rules in English. Her words sounded like an undecipherable melody, fast and clipped. Amir nodded politely, pretending to understand, while silently resolving to learn the language as quickly as possible. Their assigned room was sparse but clean: a bunk bed, a single chair, and a small window overlooking the street. Lena climbed onto the top bunk, her movements slow and heavy with fatigue. Amir sat on the chair, staring at the single piece of paper Martha had handed him. It listed resources for refugees, written entirely in English. He couldn't read a word. As night fell, Amir lit the small battery-powered lantern he'd brought from the camp. Sitting on the floor beside Lena's bunk, he began to speak softly in their native language. He told her a story from their homeland, a tale of a cunning fox and a wise old turtle. Lena's eyelids grew heavy as she listened, her breathing steadying into sleep. For a brief moment, surrounded by the warmth of their shared history, Amir felt a sliver of peace, but the peace was fleeting. Outside the window, sirens wailed, and the hum of the city's chaos seeped into the room. Amir clenched his fists. He had brought Lena here for a better future, but at that moment, he couldn't see how they would survive, let alone thrive, in a world where even the simplest word eluded him. Morning came harsh and gray. Amir woke to the sound of traffic and the chatter of unfamiliar voices outside the shelter. Lena stirred, rubbing her eyes as sunlight filtered through the dingy window. They dressed quickly and made their way to the common dining area, where the aroma of instant coffee and reheated bread filled the air. At breakfast, Martha approached their table, her kind smile unchanged. She placed a pamphlet in front of Amir and pointed to a section highlighted in bright yellow. "English classes," she said slowly, enunciating each syllable. Amir recognized the word English and nodded, his face flushing with embarrassment at his inability to respond. Martha patted his shoulder reassuringly before moving on to another table. After breakfast, Amir decided to explore the city with Lena. The streets buzzed with activity, buses screeched to stops, street vendors called out their wares, and pedestrians weaved through the chaos with practiced ease. Lena clung to his hand, her eyes darting between the towering buildings and colorful storefronts. At every corner, signs displayed messages in English, their meanings hidden behind a wall of incomprehension. When they entered a small grocery store, the language barrier became painfully evident. Amir needed milk and bread, but struggled to communicate with the cashier, a young man who spoke quickly and with visible impatience. Lena tugged at Amir's sleeve, her small voice whispering the word milk, a term she'd picked up from a cartoon back home. The cashier eventually understood, but the interaction left Amir feeling inadequate. The frustration and shame burned in his chest as they exited the store. That evening, back at the shelter, Amir sat at the small table in their room with the pamphlet Martha had given him. Lena, sensing his tension, climbed into his lap and rested her head against his chest. "Baba," she said softly, using the word for father. "Can we learn the words together?" Amir looked at her, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "Yes, my star," he replied in their language. "We will learn together." From that night on, their routine began to shift. Each evening, after dinner, Amir and Lena would sit together at the small table, practicing simple words and phrases in English. Lena's quick mind absorbed the basics faster than Amir's, but her enthusiasm was infectious, and Amir found himself more determined than ever to improve. Their sessions often ended with a story, Amir's voice weaving the rich tapestry of their homeland, while Lena's laughter filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. The city outside remained relentless, its rhythm unchanging. But within the walls of their tiny room, a new rhythm began to emerge, a rhythm of hope, resilience, and the first tentative steps toward understanding. The days passed with a steady rhythm. Amir and Lena adjusted to the routine of shelter life, but the challenges of adapting to their new environment persisted. Every interaction outside their room reminded Amir of the vast chasm that the language barrier created. Yet, within the confines of their small room, hope flickered like the dim light of their lantern. Each evening, as the city settled into its nocturnal hum, Amir would sit on the floor beside Lena's bunk and begin his storytelling. These moments became their sanctuary. Lena would lay curled up, her small face lit with anticipation, while Amir wove tales from their homeland. Each story was a thread connecting them to the life they had left behind, grounding them in a world that felt increasingly alien. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day of failed attempts to navigate the city's public transport, Amir hesitated before beginning a new tale. His mind was heavy with doubts. How could he guide Lena in a world where he could barely communicate? Lena, sensing his hesitation, reached under her pillow and pulled out a small notebook she had found in the shelter's communal room. The pages were blank except for a single word scrawled across the first page in a child's handwriting. Hope. She handed it to Amir and whispered, "Write our stories, Baba, in both languages." For me, Amir's throat tightened. He opened the notebook, running his fingers over the faint impressions of the word. It was a simple gesture, but it reignited his determination. That night, he told Lena the story of a young boy who outsmarted a great storm, weaving it with phrases from the English lessons he had begun to practice. Lena giggled at his halting pronunciation, but eagerly repeated the words after him. Amir realized something profound in that moment. These stories could be their bridge. They could help him learn and, perhaps one day, help Lena understand the duality of the world they now inhabited. The next morning, Martha approached Amir during breakfast, holding a large book with brightly colored illustrations. "This might help," she said, tapping the cover. The book was a children's English learning guide, filled with simple phrases and pictures. Amir accepted it with a grateful nod, though his pride stung at the implication. "Thank you," he managed, his accent thick but earnest. Martha's eyes lit up, and she gave him a thumbs up before walking away. The brief interaction filled Amir with a cautious sense of accomplishment. Back in their room, Lena flipped through the pages of the book with wide-eyed curiosity. The illustrations fascinated her, and she immediately pointed to a picture of a cat. "Cat," she said, her voice tentative. Amir repeated the word, carefully sounding it out. They spent the next hour immersed in the book, Lena's enthusiasm driving them forward. Later that day, Amir ventured out to explore the city again. This time he carried the children's book in his bag, determined to learn a few words to aid his navigation. As he walked through a crowded marketplace, he stopped at a fruit vendor and pointed to an apple, recalling the word he had practiced with Lena. "Apple," he said hesitantly. The vendor smiled and nodded, repeating the word with exaggerated clarity. Encouraged, Amir attempted a short sentence. "One apple, please." The vendor handed him the apple, and Amir felt a surge of pride. It was a small victory, but it marked a step forward. That evening, Martha stopped by their room to check on them. Lena excitedly showed her the notebook where she and Amir had written down English phrases alongside the stories. Martha's smile grew as she flipped through the pages. "You're doing amazing work," she said, her voice warm. "Keep this up, and you'll be teaching others in no time." Amir chuckled softly, shaking his head. Teaching others felt like an impossible dream. But as he watched Lena eagerly write another word in the notebook, he couldn't deny that something had shifted. The stories that once served as a refuge were now becoming tools of transformation, not just for him, but for Lena as well. Amir woke before dawn, the faint light of the rising sun casting a soft glow through the thin curtains of their room. Lena was still asleep, her small figure curled under the blanket. He sat at the table, flipping through the children's English guide Martha had given them, mouthing words silently to himself. Each syllable felt heavy and familiar, with the determination in his chest burned brighter than ever. By the time Lena stirred, Amir had written down a list of words from the guide. "Today," he said, pointing to the list, "we add these to our stories." Lena rubbed her eyes and smiled. Nodding eagerly, their day began with a small adventure. Armed with their growing vocabulary, Amir took Lena to a nearby park. As they walked, he pointed out objects and named them in English. Tree, bench, flower. Lena repeated each word, sometimes giggling at his mispronunciations. The park, vibrant with autumn colors, became their classroom, each leaf and branch a tool in their learning journey. When they returned to the shelter, Amir incorporated the new words into their evening routine. That night's story was about a clever bird that outwitted a hunter, filled with words they had learned that day. Lena listened intently, her eyes wide with wonder, and repeated each English word Amir wove into the tale. "You're a good teacher, Baba," she said, her voice soft but firm. Amir smiled, but the words stung with irony. How could he be a teacher when he still struggled with the basics himself? Yet, as he looked at Lena, he realized she believed in him wholeheartedly. That belief gave him strength. The shelter held occasional community gatherings, a way for residents to share their stories and connect. At one such meeting, Martha encouraged Amir to attend. "It's a chance to practice your English," she said. Though hesitant, Amir agreed, sensing an opportunity to test the progress he and Lena had made. The room was filled with a mix of refugees from different countries, each sharing their struggles and triumphs in adapting to a new life. When it was Amir's turn to speak, his hands trembled slightly, but he took a deep breath and began. "My name is Amir," he said, his voice slow but steady. "This is my daughter, Lena. We learn English together." Lena beamed up at him, her small hands clapping in encouragement. Amir hesitated, but then continued, sharing a shortened version of one of their stories. The words were simple, punctuated with pauses as he searched his mind for the right vocabulary, but the room listened attentively. When he finished, a soft ripple of applause filled the space. Martha approached him afterward, her eyes sparkling with pride. "You're doing incredible," she said. "You have a gift for storytelling. People connect with you." The compliment warmed Amir, but it also stirred a question he had been avoiding. Could his stories become more than just a personal refuge? Could they help others like him, struggling to find their voice in a foreign land? As the days turned into weeks, small victories like this continued to shape their journey. Lena grew more confident in school, her teacher noting her progress in both English and social skills. Meanwhile, Amir began to venture further out into the city, testing his language skills in real-world scenarios. Each successful interaction, no matter how minor, felt like a triumph. One afternoon, Lena brought home a drawing from school, a simple sketch of her and Amir, surrounded by words she had learned. Underneath the picture, in her careful handwriting, were the words, "My dad is my hero." Amir stared at the drawing, his chest tight with emotion. For all his self-doubt and the challenges they faced, Lena saw him as her anchor, her guide. It was a reminder of why he couldn't give up, no matter how daunting the road ahead seemed. That night, as he prepared another story for Lena, Amir included more English phrases than ever before. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time he felt they were truly moving forward, not just surviving, but building something meaningful. The chill of winter seeped into the city, and with it came added challenges. Amir had managed to secure a part-time position, the small convenience store, a modest step forward, but a vital one for sustaining himself and Lena. The job was taxing, with long hours and constant interaction with customers, which forced him to rely on his growing but still limited English skills. Despite his efforts, Amir felt the weight of his inadequacies every time he stumbled over a word or failed to understand a customer's request. He poured his evenings into studying with Lena, hoping to catch up to the demands of his new reality. His daughter, always eager, helped him practice phrases and sentences they crafted together, often giggling at his mispronunciations. One dreary afternoon, as Amir restocked shelves, the store manager approached him with a serious expression. "Amir," she said sharply, "we need to talk." Her tone made his stomach tighten. In the small office at the back of the store, the manager accused Amir of stealing cash from the register. Shocked and confused, Amir tried to explain, but his limited vocabulary and thick accent made his defense sound disjointed. No steel, he stammered. Honest, the manager wasn't convinced. Until we figure this out, you're suspended, she said firmly, her arms crossed. I need to call the police. Amir's chest constricted. The idea of the police, a misunderstanding spiraling out of control, terrified him. He thought of Lena waiting for him at the shelter and how fragile their situation was. Pleading, he tried to explain again, but the manager waved him off, her patience gone. When Amir returned to the shelter that evening, his face was pale and his shoulders slumped. Lena immediately noticed his distress. Baba, what's wrong? She asked, her small hands gripping his sleeve. He sat down heavily, struggling to find the words to explain. Trouble at work, he said simply. They think I did bad. Lena's brow furrowed, and for a moment she was silent. Then, with a determined look, she grabbed their notebook and placed it in front of him. We fix it, she said confidently. Together, Amir spent the next few days in a fog of worrying. Without his job, their financial situation would become even more precarious. Worse, the accusation of theft lingered over him like a shadow, threatening not only his reputation, but the fragile sense of stability he had worked so hard to build. Martha noticed his distress during breakfast at the shelter. Amir, you seem troubled, she said gently, sitting beside him. When he explained the situation, her expression hardened. This is unfair, she said firmly. You have rights and we'll fight this. Together they devised a plan. Martha would help Amir prepare a statement to present to the store manager, outlining his innocence. They practiced in the evenings, with Lena acting as an enthusiastic helper. She insisted on role-playing the manager, her small frame exaggeratedly stern as she repeated phrases in English for Amir to respond to. Say it again, Baba, Lena encouraged, pointing to a sentence in their notebook. I did not take the money. I am honest, Amir repeated the phrase, his pronunciation clearer with each attempt. Despite the gravity of the situation, the moments spent practicing with Lena brought a flicker of hope. Her unwavering belief in him was a balm to his battered spirit. When the day of the meeting arrived, Amir stood outside the store, his palms sweaty and heart pounding. Martha had come along for support, offering a few final words of encouragement. You've got this, Amir, she said. Just speak from the heart. Inside, the store manager sat behind her desk, her expression skeptical but willing to listen. Amir took a deep breath and began. I am Amir, he said, his voice trembling slightly but gaining strength. I work hard, I do not steal. I honest, he continued, explaining his actions on the day in question and pointing out discrepancies in the manager's assumptions. Though his English was far from perfect, his sincerity shone through. Martha chimed in when necessary, clarifying details that Amir struggled to express. After what felt like an eternity, the manager sighed and leaned back in her chair. We'll review the security footage, she said finally. If it shows you're telling the truth, I'll reconsider. Amir left the store feeling drained but cautiously optimistic. Lena greeted him at the shelter with a hug, her small arms wrapping tightly around his waist. "You did good, Baba," she said, her voice muffled against his coat. That night, as they sat down for their usual storytelling session, Amir felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was still uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure: he would never stop fighting for Lena, for their future, and for the chance to prove his worth in this new world. A week passed, and Amir heard nothing from the store. The silence gnawed at him, a reminder of how precarious his situation had become. Yet, in the midst of his turmoil, Martha approached him with an idea. "We're hosting a community storytelling night at the shelter," she said, her voice laced with enthusiasm. "It's a chance for residents to share their cultures and experiences. You should participate." Amir hesitated. The thought of standing in front of a crowd and speaking, especially in English, filled him with dread. But Lena's eager expression made him pause. "Please, Baba," she urged. "Tell one of our stories. I can help." Her faith in him outweighed his fear. Over the following evenings, Amir and Lena worked together, selecting one of their favorite tales. They translated parts into English, practicing until the words felt natural. Lena even illustrated scenes from the story on scraps of paper, holding them up as visual aids during their rehearsal. On the night of the event, the shelter's common room was transformed. Strings of light hung from the ceiling, and chairs were arranged in a semicircle. Residents from various countries filled the seats, their faces reflecting a mix of anticipation and curiosity. When Amir's name was called, his heart raced. He stepped to the front, Lena by his side, clutching her drawings. "This is a story from my home," he began, his voice trembling but steadying as he continued. He recounted the tale of a humble farmer who outsmarted a greedy merchant, weaving English phrases into the narrative where he could. Lena held up her drawings at key moments, her proud smile giving him courage. The room was silent, the audience captivated. When he finished, a wave of applause broke out. Amir looked at Lena, who beamed back at him, her eyes sparkling with pride. For the first time, he felt a sense of belonging, a connection with the people around him. Afterward, several residents approached to thank him, sharing how much they enjoyed the story. One woman, an older refugee from Sudan, wiped tears from her eyes. "Your words remind me of my own father," she said softly. "Thank you." The next morning, Amir was summoned back to the store. He entered the office with trepidation, Martha accompanying him for support. The manager's demeanor was different this time, less accusatory, more neutral. "We reviewed the footage," she said. "It shows you didn't take the money. I apologize for the misunderstanding." Relief washed over Amir, though the sting of the accusation lingered. The manager hesitated before continuing. "If you want, the job is still yours." Amir considered the offer. While the job provided stability, The experience had left him wary. Before he could respond, Martha interjected. Amir has been sharing stories at the shelter. Have you thought about how his skills might help your team connect with customers from diverse backgrounds? The manager's eyebrows lifted. Interesting. Maybe we could try something new. By the end of the meeting, they reached an agreement. Amir would return, but his role would expand to include organizing small storytelling events for the store's multicultural customers. The idea felt daunting, but Amir also saw an opportunity, a chance to turn his stories into a bridge between cultures. That evening, back at the shelter, Amir shared the news with Lena. She clapped her hands excitedly. Baba, you're going to tell stories everywhere. Her enthusiasm was contagious. As Amir prepared for his new role, he began to see his stories in a new light. They weren't just remnants of his past. They were tools for connection, growth, and understanding. When he held his first storytelling session at the store, customers gathered in curiosity. Amir shared a simple tale, sprinkling English phrases throughout. As he spoke, he noticed something remarkable. The audience's faces lit up, their attention unwavering. Afterward, a young boy approached, tugging on his mother's sleeve. "Can we come back next week?" he asked, his eyes bright with excitement. Amir smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had found his voice not just as a refugee or a father, but as a storyteller whose words could bridge the gap between worlds. The storytelling sessions at the store quickly gained popularity. What started as a modest gathering of curious customers soon grew into a weekly event. Families from diverse backgrounds came not only to shop, but also to hear Amir's tales. The sessions became a melting pot of cultures, with Amir's stories acting as a thread weaving the community together. For Amir, this was more than just a job. It was a way to reclaim his identity and share pieces of his heritage while embracing his new reality. Lena often joined him, her bright smile and enthusiasm drawing children into the fold. She would hold up her drawings or act out parts of the stories, her growing confidence in English shining through. One evening, after a particularly engaging session, the store manager approached Amir with an idea. "Your storytelling has brought in a lot of customers," she said. "Have you thought about expanding this? Maybe working with local schools or community centers?" The suggestion caught Amir off guard. The thought of speaking in front of larger groups intimidated him, but the possibility of making a broader impact excited him as well. "I will think," he replied, his English still halting, but improving with each conversation. At the shelter, Martha continued to be a source of encouragement. "You've come so far, Amir," she said one evening, watching Lena sketch another illustration for his stories. "You're not just learning English, you're teaching it, too." The realization dawned on Amir slowly. Through his stories, he wasn't just sharing words, he was helping others, especially children like Lena, to understand and connect with a language that once felt so out of reach. The idea gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since leaving his homeland. The next opportunity came unexpectedly. A teacher from Lena's school approached Amir during a parent-teacher meeting. "Lena has spoken so much about your stories," the teacher said, her tone warm and encouraging. "We'd love for you to visit the class and share one with the students." Amir hesitated. Speaking to customers at the store was one thing. Standing in front of a classroom filled with children was another. But Lena's excited tug on his sleeve and her whispered pleas, Baba, left him with little choice. On the appointed day, Amir arrived at the school with Lena by his side. The classroom was vibrant, filled with colorful posters and the chatter of children. Lena introduced him to her classmates, her pride evident as she declared, "This is my dad. He tells the best stories." Amir took a deep breath and began, choosing a simple tale about a boy who learned the value of kindness and courage. He wove English phrases into the story, pausing to explain unfamiliar words. The children listened intently, their faces lighting up with curiosity and joy. When he finished, the room erupted into applause. Several children asked questions, not just about the story, but about Amir's life and language. The eagerness to learn touched him deeply. The experience opened new doors. Soon, other schools and community groups began inviting Amir to share his stories. Each session brought new challenges, but also new rewards. He found that his storytelling was more than entertainment. It was a bridge connecting his past to his present and inspiring hope for the future. Back at the shelter, Amir and Lena began compiling their stories into a notebook, adding English translations and illustrations. Lena suggested a title, "Echoes of Home." "It's like our voices travel," she explained, "so people here can hear where we came from." Amir smiled, running his fingers over the pages. "And maybe," he said, "they'll help us hear where we're going." The notebook that Lena and Amir began compiling became their most cherished project. Every evening after dinner, they would sit together at the small table in their room, carefully translating Amir's stories into English. Lena's illustrations brought the pages to life, her childlike creativity capturing the essence of their tales with vivid strokes. Word of Amir's storytelling reached beyond the shelter and the store. A local journalist, intrigued by the growing popularity of his sessions, contacted Martha to arrange an interview. Amir hesitated at first, unsure if he could articulate his journey to a wider audience, but with Lena's encouragement, he agreed. The interview took place in a cozy cafe, where Amir shared how his stories had helped him navigate the challenges of learning English and connecting with his new community. Lena sat beside him, proudly showing off their notebook to the journalist. "This is more than a collection of stories," Amir said, his voice steady. "It's a bridge away for us to share who we are and learn who others are." When the article was published, it garnered unexpected attention. A small local publisher reached out, offering to help Amir and Lena turned their notebook into a book. The idea felt surreal, but Amir couldn't ignore the opportunity. He and Lena worked tirelessly to refine their stories, adding more English translations and expanding on the lessons embedded within each tale. Their book, Echoes of Home, Stories That Cross Borders, became a symbol of resilience and hope. The publisher organized a small launch event at the shelter, inviting members of the community to celebrate. Amir stood at the front of the room, holding the first printed copy of the book in his hands, the glossy cover displaying Lena's artwork. "This book," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "is not just mine, it is ours. It is for everyone who has ever felt lost and found their way through words." The applause was thunderous, and for the first time, Amir felt the weight of his struggles lifting. He had not only survived, but had created something lasting, something that could inspire others. Life began to change for Amir and Lena. The success of their book opened doors Amir never imagined possible. Schools and community centers invited him to speak about his journey, while the storytelling sessions continued to grow. Lena, now more confident than ever, often took the lead, introducing the stories and sharing her perspective as a child navigating to worlds. One afternoon, as they walked through the park near their shelter, Lena turned to Amir with a question that caught him off guard. "Do you think we could write more books, Baba?" Amir chuckled softly, his eyes crinkling with pride. "I think we can do anything, my star," he replied. As long as we work together. Their conversation was interrupted by a familiar face, Martha, carrying a flyer. "There's a community arts festival next month," she said, handing the flyer to Amir. "They're looking for storytellers." "I thought of you too." Amir looked at Lena, whose eyes sparkled with excitement. "Let's do it," she said without hesitation. The festival marked a turning point. Their performance, a blend of storytelling, illustrations, and English lessons, captivated the audience. People from all walks of life approached them afterward, sharing how the stories had touched them. Some expressed interest in learning about Amir's culture, while others shared their own experiences as immigrants or refugees. As the sun set on the festival, casting a warm glow over the city, Amir and Lena sat on a bench, reflecting on how far they had come. The city that once felt overwhelming and isolating now felt like home, a place where their voices had found resonance. "Do you think they understand us now?" Lena asked, leaning her head against Amir's arm. Amir looked out at the bustling streets, the hum of life around them, now familiar and welcoming. "I think we've shown them who we are," he said, "and in doing so we've learned who we are too." Their journey was far from over. New challenges and opportunities lay ahead, but Amir and Lena faced them with a bond strengthened by their shared stories and a future brightened by hope. Together, they had turned the echoes of their past into a symphony of belonging.